All right. Well, I can see our faces in OBS. That's usually a pretty big win. So we're going to start a little early. See if we can't get anybody to hang with us after that amazing session from Whitney and Lee
Yep.
getting into all things Kubernetes. We'll see what kind of trouble. I hope I updated everything. I'm just slightly off kilter here with this, dive right in early kind of thing. Usually I got to give people a little bit of a break in between. But hey, I mean, we'll just see what kind of trouble we get into, and it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
So good
Good.
evening, Sergi. How are you?
Good evening. Yeah, I'm doing well. What about yourself?
I mean, I can't complain. I think spring is on its way in the Midwest, which is a good thing. I'm ready to be done with snow and winter. I know you said you've seen snow, I think, twice in Barcelona.
Twice in my life in Barcelona, but it just melted right away, so it can't be
Yeah.
considered even snow.
No, no. But I mean, you have the advantage of being able to visit snow if you really want
Yeah.
to.
I mean, it's a couple of hour drive, so not far away from here. So we have the best of the two worlds, beach and then snow. So I can't complain.
Right, right. Yeah, I wish I had that. For me, snow's kind of the all the time winter thing. We occasionally have the brown Christmas, but there will be snow. There's just no getting around it. You can't avoid that. Comes with the territory.
Uh,
Comes with the
I hate
franchises.
winter. Yeah, probably because I don't know how to ski, but
Yeah.
yeah, I prefer summer.
It
That's
is
fine.
not my favorite season, to say the absolute least. I do not particularly enjoy that. And yes, Layla did force me to go early today, but I appreciate that, Layla. I mean, you prodded me, and we're here. We're just hanging out. We're just doing the pre-show.
Yeah.
Pre-show is probably my favorite part of this whole thing in many ways, and it's probably something I should record eventually. But that's okay. That's okay. Well, I'm delighted to be joined here, but I'm wearing my. This is the closest thing I have to a Barcelona shirt. I bought this last time I was in Barcelona, and it is very bright and hopefully will cheer me up because it's cold outside. But and for those of you that aren't Barca fans, I'm sorry. Just have to do. They're not, although they're not, I guess, doing particularly well this year. My son follows La Liga more than I do, and pretty sure they're not exactly killing it. Probably okay.
Yeah, especially now. I'm not a football fan. More into tennis than football, but as mentioned, I would support Barcelona
There you go.
team, of course. Yeah, that's my team.
I'm weird enough that I do have a really old Real jersey up in my closet too from the first time I ever visited Spain, but that's I haven't worn that in a while. It's in the back recesses of the closet, and that's okay. I don't have any problem with it. I don't have a dog in that proverbial fight. I don't have any of that growing up in that sort of climate, and I have less of that to worry about. But that's all right. So, well, Sergi, why don't you give us your origin story? How'd you get into this weird tech space? I think that'll lead us very naturally into Spring IO, and we can riff on that for a bit and see what kind of trouble that gets us into.
Yeah, well, I've been with programming for a long time. So maybe since I was 13, 14, I started developing my first applications as a kid, right? Like real simple things, but it was fun, right? So I was doing it like as a hobby, but I really wanted to become a lawyer, right? So I didn't study for computer science at the very beginning, right? Before going to university, but then I realized that this was my thing. So I changed my mind. I said, "No, let's do it," right? But I didn't do any like hard maths, or physics. So I had to do a lot of work before going to computer science. Um, yeah, a lot of maths before joining the University of Computer Science. But I made it, right. So I just uh, went to computer science. Yeah, that was my thing. So after my bachelor's, when it was a master degree, one of my professors came to me and he was like, "Hey, do you want to build a company with me?" I just started. I said, "Oh, sounds good, right? It's a pretty cool idea." And yeah, I've been doing Java since 2002. That was 2005, and I was looking for what's the best way to do this, right? And I found something called Spring Framework back in
Oh, sure.
2005. I was like, oh, probably it's a good thing, right? Had a pretty good documentation, so pretty good. I couldn't understand much of it, to be honest, back then. But I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I got my first book. I went through the book and I started like building, right, that company with Spring Framework back in 2005. And those were my early days with the Spring framework, which I really enjoyed. So we just started that company. We hired some people, and we had a product right on the Spring framework, CG security, right, and other frameworks as well. It was pretty fun. But at that time, it was also part of a Java user group, which was called Java Hispano. It was covering all the Spanish-speaking countries, not only Spain. And we were doing a bunch of events, right? Even with some ecosystems, right? We had a lot of good collaboration with some ecosystems. And I think that the last one we ran was in 2008, and that was with Oracle already. But I think that the Oracle at that time didn't really understand the Java user groups, so they treated us as Oracle users instead of Java users. But that was the last event we did with the Java user group. So it was a really huge or large user group, more than 40,000 members. So it's quite large. It was an online Java user group covering all the Spanish-speaking countries. And I was like, okay, so
our technical difficulties. There we go.
So in 2006, actually, I tried to deliver trainings for the company behind Spring, which was called Spring Source, which didn't work at that time. So I decided to start my own trainings. And as I was with my professor, I started delivering trainings at the university, spring trainings in 2006, which was fun. But then in 2008, I tried again with Spring Source, right? That worked out. So I started delivering trainings for Spring Source, late 2008. So I had the Java user group. I was delivering the Spring trainings. And I was like, maybe we could do something here. Maybe we can do some event right around the Spring ecosystem. And one of my friends at the Java user group was a professor. He's a professor at the university. So I was like, hey, can we just use the university as a venue of that event, right? So let's do one day event around the Spring. Let's see what happens, right? And we just created that, and all of a sudden, like 600 people registered. It's like, oh Jesus, right? So it's a lot of people. It was a free event, like a big meetup, right? But like with all the big events, turn up it's 50%. So I just created like t-shirts. I got some sponsors and everything. And you can imagine how many t-shirts I have at home from 2010, right? It's like more than 300 t-shirts at home because like 300 people that didn't show up, right?
Sure.
So that was my first Spring IO. It was not called Spring IO at the very beginning, 2010. It was called Spring to GX Day. Let's say if you remember the initial Spring events. Well, we had the Spring one in Europe. I think that the last one was in 2008. But then we had Spring to GX right in the US. Right? So I tried to say, well, let's do something here in Europe. Well, it was actually in Madrid. Right? So I based in Barcelona, but we did it in Madrid because my friends from Madrid, and the university is in Madrid, so I didn't have to pay anything. So that's why it was in Madrid. But it was called Spring to GX Day. That's one day. It was pretty successful, mainly Spanish-speaking speakers, and the audience was local as well. But then all of a sudden, I got an email from someone at Spring Source saying, "Hey, this name looks really close as the event we do right here in the US, so you should probably change the name." I was like, okay, yeah, fair enough. So let's call it the Spring IO. Why not, right? So second edition was called Spring IO, still running in Madrid, right, at the university, but I didn't want to end up having 300 t-shirts at home. So I just had a really small entry fee, 20 euros. That's just to say, well, if you want to come, just confirm that you will come, right? And also, pretty successful. Maybe 90% of Spaniards, 10% of people from abroad, but still at a pretty decent event. And I don't know how, but I convinced Jürgen to come to Madrid. I'm kind of sure. I'm not sure how I pulled that off, but he.
Because it's Madrid. Why wouldn't you want to go to Madrid?
Yeah, well, he showed up. I was really happy about it, right? So Yeah, a lot of spring guys came to that event. So I did 2010, 12, and 13 in Madrid. Then I stopped for a couple of years. Um, don't know why, right? That was just my hobby. It
Well,
requires a lot of,
it's a lot of effort to put on an event. I think
yeah,
people
it is.
sometimes underestimate that.
It is, and you don't know until you do it, right? So
Yeah,
a lot of moving parts, catering, yeah, providers. If you do it in your free on your free time, it's a lot of work. At the
right,
end of the day, I'm a developer myself, and
right,
I'm not an event or I was not an event organizer, right? I mean, my passion is developing, like all of you. It was just fun to just have this gathering of all spring enthusiasts. So but yeah, eventually it took a lot of time. My free time, I was like, hey, let's stop for a couple of years now. And it was actually Jurgen in one of the Spring One events. I can't remember whether it was in Chicago or, yeah, probably was that 2014. Can't remember. It was Chicago or some other place. But he was like, hey, let's bring back a Spring IO. I was like, I'm not sure, but if you ask me, I'll do it. Right. So, and
if
that's
you
how I,
insist.
yeah, I really like you, right? So he's a real nice guy. So I was like, okay, if you say so, we can do it. But I'm gonna do it at home, right? So which is Barcelona. I'm going to uh, change a little bit the event. So no Spanish, focus on international audience, right? In Barcelona, which I think it has a better brand. I mean, Madrid works really well for internal events. It's in the center, and yeah, uh, everyone or all people from Spain can easily go to Madrid. But I think that Barcelona has a better brand towards Europe, right? To make it more international. It's like let's try it and see what happens. So yeah, all of a sudden here the attendees just shifted, right? So we had probably, I don't know, 30% of the Spaniards instead of 90% of the Spaniards, people coming from all over
Wow.
Europe. Yeah, that shift on vision really worked out in 2015. But still, it was a small event at a venue that maybe get 500 people. Yeah, it was 2015, 16, 17 on that venue, but that venue became too small. I had to close registrations more than 1 month before the event. It was like,
Wow.
yeah,
It's a good
all
problem to
people
have as
here.
an organizer.
It is, but on the other hand, I mean, there are no, there's nothing in between this and this, right? So either you are like 300, 400, 500 event, or you just go to, I don't know, 300,
Right,
300,000 or 3,000
right,
event. Um, there's nothing in between, I think, in terms of
right.
venues. That's a problem because that takes more organization, more risk,
Yep,
right? And I mean, you have to be sure that it will work out, right? Especially as being an independent. I mean, there's no company behind me, right?
right,
So it's just me and myself, right? This is a one-man show, so it's a lot of risk, right, in taking that decision. But the community was asking for it. You could see it. I
right,
mean, every year, like having to close the registrations more than a month before the event. I mean, you have to go big, right? So
right.
then I decided to move to another venue, which is the current one, and it's a venue that can host up to 3,000 people. Right? The auditorium is 1,600, but yeah, it's a decent size, and it worked out. So we've been there since 2018, and yeah, now we are only 15% of the Spaniards. See, this is a
Wow.
really international event. Right? So we have
Sure.
even more Germans than Spaniards. And yeah, we have people coming from 45 different countries. So the event has grown organically, like the Spring Framework, right? So from the
Right.
ground up. I'm really happy about that, about the support that I received from the community. And I think it's a good opportunity for all of us to get together, have a place where we know that we can get together. It's a really niche conference, right? One of a kind, I would say. But it's really good to have it here in Europe because I was usually going to Spring One in the US. It's quite far, right, for us in Europe.
Yeah, it's a big
So
ask.
it's So it's really nice to have something closer to home right here
Right.
in Europe. And Barcelona in May doesn't sound like
Ooh.
terrible, you know.
No. No, I can attest to that. That is the right. It's a good time of year to be in Barcelona, to be sure. And thank you, Whitney, for leading us in. And Spencer Gibb says hello, by the way. So hi, Spencer.
Yeah,
Good to see you,
hello,
buddy.
Spencer.
So,
Yeah,
I
he's
didn't.
made it to Barcelona. It's
Oh yeah,
previous
I
editions.
the last time Spence and I were chatting, I think that was high on his list. So I'm expecting that that's going to happen for him if so
I
inclined. But
haven't seen a submission from him, so just ask
oh,
him to
come on,
send some
Spencer, get
some
on that.
because
Make us.
you know
I'll
the
help you,
conference
Spencer.
papers is closing tomorrow.
Oh,
So
geez, it is
you
tomorrow. Okay,
better yes, better
that's
hurry
right.
up.
Tomorrow's March. How did that happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You know, we have only 28 days in February. I was like, hey, still we have 4 days to yeah to add the CFP. So, no, it's actually tomorrow. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Spencer says the app is open as he speaks. So
Yeah.
go. Oh, Nate, let's see. Thindle asks a very important question. What is that in my window? That's my cat Han, actually, in his little perch. So I don't have a way of like zooming in on him on this camera, unfortunately. I'm still in the middle of getting my hands on a better streaming kit. So that's my cat Han. So Han is pairing with me apparently on this morning. Actually, what it boils down to is there's just really good sunlight right now, so that's why the cat's hanging out there. Cats are solar powered. This is something that Billy was talking, or I made this comment to Billy on Twitter over the weekend because his I think his wife had two cats on the blanket and he was catless, and I said, well, that's because they like the blankets or they like the sun. So if they don't have the sun, then they're going to go for the blanket. But I guess we'll see if Billy figures that out. So thank you for asking, Thindle. But yes, that's one of my two cats, Han. Chewy whining somewhere nearby. Who knows where he is? They
So
do tend to like to be part of these.
are you in the process of getting the third one like Billy as well?
I don't think so. I mean, these two are brothers. Exactly, of course, Cora. They're solar powered. That's what cats are. They get along fairly well most of the time, and they get in just enough trouble that I think having a third one would probably. Well, my son would want a third one. There's no getting around. I should say it is a happy birthday to my son. It is his 15th birthday, which I'm struggling to get my head wrapped
Wow.
around how I'm
Happy
old
birthday to
enough to have
him.
a 15-year-old. Yeah, he doesn't listen or watch any of this anyway, so it's not like he's going to hear it. But I feel better knowing that I said happy birthday. But I know he would want a third cat, but then he doesn't have to do anything with the cats. Like he's not responsible for care and feeding, so it's a pretty easy ask for him to add a
Right.
third one. So I will do that, Thindle. I will wish him a happy birthday from the internet. So it is very strange to me that my son's 15. I still don't quite know how that happened. I don't I don't get that. It's the joy of getting older, I guess. It just happens. If you continue to feed them, then this is what happens. So
Right.
that is how that works.
Yeah, my daughter is a year and a half, so
Oh geez.
still long, long way.
It goes fast though. I mean, the other day my wife's phone surfaced up a bunch of pictures of us over the years, and a lot of them had Everett and Imagine That. And it is so mind blowing to see how much he's changed. Like this, having a 1.5-year-old, the amount of change that happens
Yeah,
from the first couple months to the like two is stunning. And then they just kind of slows down a little bit as they get older. But then they get into this 10 to 15 range. My son changed so much between like 13 and 14. It's mind boggling. And I look at pictures of him now and I look at pictures of him from just a few years ago, and he is just not even close to the same creature. It's
yeah,
just stunning. So got to enjoy all of it because you'll
right.
blink and you'll have a teenager and you'll be like, oh wait, she's learning how to drive a car, and oh, she's doing what now, and she's dating, and oh yeah, it's good times.
Oh,
It's
by the
good
way, I
times.
got a submission from Spencer
Well, there you
as we were
go. Yeah,
talking.
he said that he has the CFP app open, so there you go. It
Yeah,
works, right? That's how the game works. If
it
we if we
does.
we talk about it, then let's see if is there anybody else. Can we get Cora to submit? Can we get Whitney to submit? Like, what else can we do while we're we're live on we
Yeah,
should
now's the
like pair on a
time.
submission right now. Let's see what happens. So
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of interesting topics. Yeah, this year to cover in Spring IO. Certainly, so Spring
totally.
Native, like Spring Boot 3 coming out. So a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, a lot of good ground to cover. It's interesting. You talk about starting with Java back in kind of the early aughts, and I mean that's kind of when I got my start with Java as well. And just amazing to me how much Java changed over the years. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think about, when I first got into Java, Java in a nutshell was actually a thin book. And the last edition of Java in a nutshell I saw was like 800 pages. And it's like, well, I don't think that qualifies as a nutshell book anymore. Like you might need to trim that up. But it's been really interesting to sort of see that evolution of the language, and same with Spring for that matter, right? I mean, you go back to the early days of
Hmm.
Spring compared to where it is now. It's pretty amazing. And is there anything in your experience that sort of, like, a lot of languages tend to kind of have this sort of flash in the pan and then they kind of disappear? I mean, why do you think that Java and Spring have continued to be such major players in the technology space?
Yeah, I think that one of the successes of the Spring has been the community. As I mentioned, Spring has been written from the ground up, so a lot of contributions from the community.
Mm-hmm.
And the community has been really welcoming and open. That's, yeah, such a good thing for newcomers, right? You join this community, you see it's so open, right? And welcoming newcomers that you feel right at home, right? And I would say that this is something that it's really crucial for the success of the framework. And over these years, Spring has been adapting to every single trend, right? So in terms of simplifying configuration, like SQL, cloud, right? Tools for development. So now Spring native. So I think that another key success factor is that it has been evolving, right, with the yeah, the community, the trends, right, the language, everything. So, and I plan, or actually, hopefully, right, we'll see that in the next 10 years or decade or 2 decades. But it's really hard to find technology that has been there for, yeah, I can say almost 20 years already. Not
Right.
20 years, but almost 20 years. It's
Pretty close.
extremely hard. And I mean that investment, right, if you think about it, right, so if you invest in a technology and it lasts 20 years, it's like, oh, I made the perfect bet, right, at that time. Because if you think about like all the JavaScript frameworks and all the stuff,
Right.
they're driving you crazy, right? So you invest so much time on one framework and then it gets outdated,
Right.
right, the next day. So it's really nice to see that you bet on a technology and it lasts, right, for so long, right? That it adapts to the current. It's not outdated, right? The thing is that even if it's not 20 years old, it's not. It doesn't feel outdated. Right?
Right.
Uh, it's really nice to have this investment.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think and Thindle's got an interesting comment here about with .NET. It shares a lot of why .NET is still relevant. That it's I think
It
it's the
is.
fact that it continues to evolve, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to stay stagnant. It's easy to sort of rest on the proverbial laurels. And I would argue, and I know this is at least somewhat self-serving because he's my friend and he's here on the chat, but I'd say it's also thanks to folks like Spencer and everybody
Oh yeah.
else in the team that's willing to
Definitely.
keep seeing these trends, and then, all right, these are the changes we need to make. Let's go ahead and do whatever we have to do to make that work. And that's hard to do, right? It's easy to just be like, oh yeah, it's good enough. It's, if you've ever read The Innovator's Dilemma, I mean, it's that whole thing of, well, this is what our customers are asking for, so I don't care about this new thing. Well, but what if that's the direction everything goes? Are we prepared to move in that direction? Can we meet that audience or not? So
Yeah, I'm asking myself, when is this going to end? Always.
sure.
And talking with Jurgen as well, it's like, hey, we're here today. When is that going to end? It's like, I don't know, but all of a sudden there's something new, and Spring is just having support for that, and it's exciting again. So I don't know how this happened over all these years, but we've seen different waves, right? And we're riding the wave, right? With these
Right.
new trends and technologies. It's so nice to have this feeling of sticking to this technology and then just yeah, going along with all these new things and features and trends.
Well, and part of that is definitely the investment that organizations have made in Spring
Oh
and
yeah,
Java. There's absolutely no getting around that. That when you've got hundreds, thousands of mission critical apps that depend on this, it's a lot harder to just rip that all out and go in a different direction. And again, I mean, this is where I'm self-servingly praising my Spring friends here, but it's their ability to continue to keep it relevant that has enticed or encouraged people to continue to make that investment, right? And I feel the same way about Java. The things that Brian Getz and team have managed to continue to put into the language are why people continue to invest and are actively looking for ways to get off, as you would with many JavaScript frameworks, right? I mean, JavaScript frameworks
Yeah.
feel like sort of the flavor of the day, and okay, we're done with that, so let's rewrite it. But we don't need to touch the backend because the backend's solid.
Yeah, and this is really hard to achieve. If it's like a brand new framework, it's really easy to adopt all these new trends and technologies and so on.
Right.
But for a framework that has been there and a language that has been there for so many years, adding something to the language or the framework is like harder and harder every day, right? So you
Yes.
have to maintain backwards compatibility. You want to make everyone happy, right? Yeah, as we know, we have still people maybe stuck in Java 8, right? And Java 11, and now well, Java
Uh-huh.
11 is a factor, but we still have people stuck in Java 8. So we
Yeah.
have to support these people as well. And adding new stuff into the framework is hard. And I think that Spring has done a really good job maintaining this backwards compatibility and this smooth path, right? When upgrading to a new version, you basically change the version and everything works magically, right? That's such a good feeling. It's like, hey, I'm on the last release, and it worked. I haven't changed anything.
And I
So
don't think people appreciate how much engineering effort goes into that, and that it
oh, yeah.
requires that as a guiding principle. Now, I've had that conversation with Brian about that with Java. People have their pet feature, like, why doesn't Java do this? It's so simple. All you'd have to do is XYZ. And on the surface, sure, it is just as easy as adding that, but it's how that feature interacts with every other feature. And what does that mean for all these other things that we can't just go break? Yeah, I think that's the other part that people don't always appreciate about Java, Spring, .NET, these things that have been around for a while. You can't make this breaking change and then just expect, well, you guys can just rewrite all your apps. It's no big deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a death knell. Like you can't do that. And so it's having to think through all of those edge cases and what happens when this feature interacts with that feature, and oh geez, how should we handle that? And it is a testament to the engineering effort and discipline behind that. And I don't think it gets enough credit, to be real honest with you.
Yeah, so kudos to the Spring team because
Yes.
yeah, the backwards compatibility has been amazing since the very beginning, right?
Mm.
And yeah, on the other hand, like if you look at yeah, Spring 6 and Spring 3, the baseline will be HTTK 17, right? So Java 17. Spring is also kind of like pushing everyone to move ahead to Java 17. It's not breaking right backwards compatibility. It's actually pushing people to the new LTS versions of Java, which is also good, I think. Someone has to make the move where sometimes we need to be forced to create. So I think it's also good. Otherwise, everyone will still be on Java 8 because, yeah, company policies and all this stuff. But it's good that yeah, Spring not only maintains backwards compatibility, but it's also pushing
Right.
the community forward right into the right direction.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I spent a lot of my career in the enterprise and dealing with a lot of the sort of fear, uncertainty, and doubt around doing an upgrade on a language version. I think some of us have this sort of muscle memory from, you think back to like operating systems back in the 90s, early aughts. There was this sort of time where if a new version of the operating system came out, well, your only option is to buy a new computer. It just won't run on your existing machine. Doesn't matter how old it is, just it's not going to happen. And that's obviously changed to the point now where we get pretty good life out of most of our equipment. And I think there's still a little bit of that. Oh, geez, but the last time we upgraded COBOL, it like destroyed us, and so we can't ever do that ever again. And it's like it has gotten better. Are there going to be some changes? Sure. Some of them are fairly mechanical, and it's just a matter of trusting yourself and also having, I guess, that sort of safety net of tests to fall back on. And maybe the testing isn't as widespread as I want to believe it is in 2022, but yeah, it's fun. It keeps us employed.
That's true. By the way, another submission from Spencer. So I think that we have
Oh,
to
look at
keep
that.
this
Spencer's
conversation going.
busy.
Yeah, so
Good job, Spencer. See, it's all I had to do was call him out on Twitch, and then we solved that problem. So I'm delighted by that. You know, you bring up community, and I definitely feel like that's one of Spring's sort of secret sauces that I don't think always gets the attention it deserves. And I feel the same way about Java. I mean, Java for me was sort of my entree into user groups, meetups, things of that nature. And I think back to the aughts. And I actually had this conversation with Sharat a few months back, I think. It's amazing to me that right now you look at almost any decent sized city and there's probably almost any day of the week there's a meetup of some sort, a user group of some sort. And I feel like Java kind of kickstarted that. And maybe that's naive. Maybe there were things before and that just wasn't my space, so I didn't see it. But I feel like that's where a lot of that community sort of grew up from. Is there anything particular about that you think encourages community? Is it, what, I mean, having organized conferences, organizing user groups. I mean, do you have any thoughts on? Well, I mean, the 40,000 person user group. That's crazy to me. I mean, what do you think it is about Java Spring that sort of draws people in that way? And yes, I will definitely say that about AJUG as well.
Yeah, well, I think that yeah, we have communities over around different languages, not only in Java, but you
Yeah.
see that also in .NET and JavaScript as well. So JavaScript is huge, right? So we have a
Mhm.
lot of Angular communities. Android as well is huge, right? It's yeah, probably Java and Kotlin, right? But yeah, Android, yeah, JavaScript. Um, we see a lot of like, huge communities. I think that yeah, these communities have evolved over these years. So when we ran the Java user group called Java Spanner, it was a distributed Java user group. I think that well, we have basically an online site where everyone would post, articles right on yeah the new things and so on. And that was working pretty well back in 2005, 6, 7, and so on. But then all this changed, right? And everyone was posting on their blogs, right?
Right.
So this posting, or it's like things like the service side, and all those sites
Yeah.
back in the days, they were really popular. I was checking them like every day.
Right.
But all of a sudden, this changed, right? And everyone was like, "No, I'm going to post that on my personal blog, right?" And probably to build your own brand, and all this stuff. But anyway, even if these online communities change, right, to more centralized to decentralized on these blogs, personal blogs, and so on, there's actually a common place where we get together, right, physically, right, and these are
Right.
the joint groups or conferences, and I think that we humans need to get together. Right, so we cannot be online. It would be great to meet you in person, right? It's this community that are built like remotely online to like come together at some point, right? It's really really powerful when we share, thoughts. But I think that these like physical events are the ones that build trust, right?
Right.
You meet someone, you share, your experiences, conversations, and this is how you build trust, right? With other people. That's how the community, I think, gets stronger and stronger. I think that this is how we build a strong community by getting together, knowing who is behind what, and sharing. Right, sharing is caring. Right, sharing everything with the community. So I think it's real powerful. These in-person events. They don't have to be big, right? So even small events are
Right.
really, really powerful. I really enjoy going to like small Java user groups, meeting people, right? To be honest, I feel more comfortable in small groups than large groups, right?
Sure.
That's where you can have like a really interesting discussions as well. But so yeah, I think that it's these in-person events are really powerful to build trust and know the people on. I don't know, it has some magic,
Yeah.
especially now where we have been at home for a couple of years, right?
Right.
I really feel the need to go out and meet people again. So I was doing a lot of traveling, so most of you. So I really miss traveling with people. And, I feel stuck here at home, and I really feel the need. So um,
It's
I
like
don't
the
know. There's something
biggest
magic behind
it's the
behind
biggest
this.
dose of cabin fever, and it's universal instead of it just being I've been stuck inside because it's cold out or something. It's this
Yeah.
giant dose of that. And yeah, I hear you, I feel it.
Yeah. But again, I think that these capabilities are not only Java ecosystem, but also in other ecosystems. Just happen that maybe we are not familiar with them, right? But I see a lot of huge communities right around. Yeah, I don't know, JavaScript, or as mentioned, Angular or Kotlin and so on. So I think it's all
So,
about in-person events and getting in touch with people, the human part of all this.
well, and I think we're hopefully finally getting to that point. I mean, the last 2+ years has been really hard. It's tough to do this over a screen. It's hard to make that connection over a screen. We attended our first concert last night. The Imagine Dragons was in town, and so we went and hung out that, and it
Nice.
was really powerful to just have that communal experience. I mean, certainly you can just listen to the music. You could watch a like we watched a couple of like streaming kind of concert like
Yeah.
things over the pandemic, but it's not the same feeling as being in this arena with, I don't know, 18,000 other people. I mean, it was a little weird. I'm not gonna lie, right? You go from being in your living room, your den, your wherever, to, oh wow, I'm in this giant space with thousands and thousands of other people. Didn't feel as weird as I thought it was going to, actually, but I'm hopeful that we are only a few weeks away from being able to start coming back together as a community. And I know there's going to be some long awkward hugs coming up when this dam finally breaks. So
Yeah, I think that is that we have to come back at some point, right?
yeah,
We have to decide when, right? Of course, it's not going to be like 2019, right? All of a sudden, but things have changed, and I
right,
think that we have to adapt to this. But we need that, right? We need this like human interaction and get together again the safest way possible. But we have to come back at some point, right?
yeah,
And eventually we'll get back to normal. But that's not going to be this year, probably, right?
no,
Because yeah, as you mentioned, right? So it's kind of awkward, right? It's a different situation. We are not used to this anymore. So we have to build that again, right?
yeah.
It will come, but I see this year as a transition year, right? I understand that a lot of people won't be willing to travel or won't be willing to gather in these huge conferences and so on. But well, we'll be coming back slowly, and everyone will decide the pace. Right?
Hmm.
But I feel that it personally.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to look a little different for a while. My guess is there's going to be a lot more hand sanitizer, and that's
Oh
probably a
yeah.
permanent addition. I don't expect that to change in 6 months or 5 years. And I think there may be other similar sorts of things, right? Where maybe instead of it being a chafing dish buffet, it'll be a grab and go kind of scenario, and I think that's fine. We'll adapt. That's what humans do. And Spencer said they went to the Disney Frozen at Michigan State, and so now you got Let It Go stuck in your head, I presume, Spencer, which is fine. It's a good song. Good song.
All right.
That's one thing you'll notice with your kid as she gets older. There'll be these things that they're really really into, and then like a day happens, and then no, that's for little kids.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
my son used to watch Frozen, and we've got good friends of ours that have two kids, two daughters, same age basically as Everett, and one actually same exact birthday. They're birthday buddies. And when they were younger, you could belt out Frozen, and they would all like, "Oh, this is amazing." And now they're just like, you couldn't pay these three kids to watch Frozen. Like, no, not gonna
Wow.
happen. Not gonna happen. So yeah, I know, Glenn. I mean, that's what I had to do. I had to try to get an earworm stuck in your head. So sorry about that. You'll just have to deal with it. Sorry, dude. Sorry, not sorry. See now, Glenn, the real trick is you have to replace an earworm with a different earworm. So, you should suggest another earwormy song, Glenn, and then that'll get in your brain that way. Now, you and I had the luxury of sort of growing up with Java and kind of growing up with Spring. It's bless your heart, Pink Floyd, nice. All right. Oh, Cora's got to go to a meeting. That's too bad. Um, Do you have any advice or suggestions for someone who's maybe right out of school, just got into programming, and they see Java or they see Spring, and it's like, wow, where do I even begin to kind of get my head wrapped around this ginormous space?
um, well, my brother is 10 years younger than me. Right? He finished university maybe 3, 4 years ago. He just started his career with Salesforce.
Nice.
And I was like, okay, that's fine. But I'm not sure if you enjoy it or not. But why don't you try this thing called Spring and Java? So I have a really close example right at home right now about someone who's fresh into Java and Spring. So of course, when you hear Java and Spring, probably when you're fresh out of school, that doesn't sound like the newest thing, right? Because
Right.
it's not, right? So probably for someone who's new, there are like some other like more fancy stuff to work on, right? But again, the thing that we have been having Spring, right, for so many years, and that it pays off, right, investing in the technology because we see, right, that it's constantly evolving. For what we can see this year, right, it's going to happen for the next I don't know how many years. But so I would say that even it's not like the newest stuff right out there and more fancy stuff out there, it's actually a good investment, right, for your career. I would say, right?
Hmm.
It's you're not going to work on old stuff. Probably you can, right? If you work on a legacy project, right? But you don't have to. Right? There are plenty of new greenfield developments that are built on Spring and so on. So I think that it's a great investment right, if you're just starting with Java and Spring. So again, it's not something like a really fancy, but probably other fancy technologies will go away or fade away right in some years, and you'll have to relearn something new. Right? So I would say that well, investing in the right technology will pay off. Right? But again, everyone has to define its own technology, the one that they enjoy. Yeah, for instance, my brother is now enjoying Spring Boot. Um, I'm happy with that. I mean, I didn't force him to go down this route, but I was like, hey, why don't you just try it? Just try it. Say something different, right? So you saw what Salesforce is all about. Now it's
Right.
point you into another direction. Then you choose, right? Maybe if you don't like it, maybe you want, I don't know, mobile development or front end
Right.
development. That's your thing, right? Like, it's all about trying. Just try it, right? So when you are a fresh grad, you can afford, right, trying new things, right? So just try, right? So keep on trying different things. Try front end, try back end, try mobile, right? So then
Hmm.
decide. Right? But invest on something that pays off, like in the long run. Let's say at a specific feature, and you enjoy it. We have to work right on that. So why not enjoy what you're doing? I would say that's the most important thing, regardless of what you're doing. So just enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. There's so many technologies that you could invest in, and when you've been in this space for more than 5 or 10 minutes, you realize that new technologies come along at a real regular clip, and you have to have some filters in place to be able to say, okay, is this worth my time or not? And some of that's just what you're interested in, right? I mean, I did a lot of front end work back in the day because that's what I liked to do. I like usability. I like that kind of work. And I was never particularly good at SQL. So, I like to joke that I wrote just enough SQL that they wouldn't let me write SQL anymore. It's sort of like you break the lawnmower and then you don't have to mow the lawn. So that's kind of how I worked on that. But there are a lot of different ways to be an engineer, and there's a lot of different
Yeah.
avenues, and I think that's part of what I love about this space is you can take things in a lot of different directions. But
The
to your
market is
point,
huge with a lot of opportunities,
yeah.
especially nowadays, right? So
Well, and I think it bodes well to have a diverse skill set to be able to go in different directions as market fluctuates and as your interest fluctuates. You're not
yeah,
interested in this
so
anymore. Cool, and you got some other things you can fall back on.
we're so lucky that we can choose, right?
Right?
Other professions can't choose, right? But we can choose. There's always something fancy, new, right? That you will enjoy for sure. Right? So you can decide
Hmm.
whether you want to stick to what you're doing or you want to try something new. So yeah, I'm really glad we're in this space.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have to watch out for resume driven design. It's so easy to get in that mindset of I want to put this on my resume, and ergo that's the reason why we should use insert some shiny new thing that we've never used anywhere else. It'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong? And I think everybody who's been in software long enough has at least one of those horror stories of, somebody just built something and then it became the Galapagos Island project and nobody knew how to maintain it because, oh, we don't do that technology except for that one project, and it's a game of rock paper scissors to see who has to go in and maintain it. It's good times. It's good times. Oh, Stack Overflow driven design, Thindle. That, yeah, I will allow that. I think there's some truth to that as well. Yeah, it and maybe this is just me putting my like architect hat on, but I learned this thing because it was cool versus I didn't learn a darn thing. Yeah, well, there is a lot of that, right? I mean, we tend to have, and I don't know what's cause and effect, but a lot of developers seem to have really short attention spans, and we're very easily distracted. I can my if a bird flew by right now, that cat would be pounced up against the window trying to get at the bird. And I feel like that's what a lot of developers are. So, oh, this is a great question. When can you say you're an experienced developer? How many projects? How many new projects? Other factors? I have an answer to this, but Sergi, I'm curious what you think.
Um, you know, I've been delivering the Spring trainings for 13 years. And usually when you go to a company and you ask, well, what's the background of the people that are going to attend the trainings? They're all experts.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, because, actually talking to the manager, right? These guys have been, doing the Spring for 5 years, and they're experts on Spring and so on. So I think that it's not a matter of how many years you have been working on that, because you might be working on a Spring project. I mean, everything is already set up, and you're basically copying pasting stuff. You
Right.
don't necessarily need to understand what's going on. Right? You have been working with those projects for a long time, but that doesn't necessarily make you an expert on that particular technology. So it's hard, right, to say when you are an expert based on time or a time frame, I would say, right? So it's hard to say. Hard to say.
Well, Spencer says for him it was when he wasn't the youngest on a team anymore, and there is some truth to that. But I would say that, and I use this as sort of my dividing line on, like, when should you become an architect or when are you ready to be an architect? That's kind of my wheelhouse, how to move from being a developer to being an architect. And the advice, and I know I've cribbed this from others. I'm pretty sure I stole this from Neil Ford, but I maybe I cribbed it from Mark Richards. I don't know. You should be on a project long enough to see the consequences of your decisions. Too often, and I mean, this is one of those sayings that everybody seems to say was theirs, but most developers don't have 10 years of experience, they have 1 year of experience 10 times. And so if you
Yeah.
haven't been on a project long enough to go, oh yeah, that was actually a really bad idea, or wow, that actually worked out really well, and to me, that's the key thing, is to have been on, hopefully more than one project long enough to start to see the outcome from decisions that were made when we had incomplete information and insufficient time to make a decision. But
Yeah, that's a good one.
yeah, that's the way I look at it. So let's see. Fendel says, let's see, first full-time job I had, started giving people the title enterprise architect after 4 years. That seems a little too soon. None of us had even been close to enterprise system, much less architect. It does allow you to bill higher, though. Yes, then I think that may have had something to do with that titling, if I had to wager. But I mean, I see that a lot in this industry, and sometimes companies will do that as a way of, okay, this person's a flight risk. They're getting offers or they're looking, so we'll give them this big important title and then sort of
Right.
push them into the deep end of the pool. Might not be the best idea if you barely know how to dog paddle, and yet we seem to want to do that. So, oh, and I guess Han's going to come over and join the conversation. He's going to. All right, let me move my phone. Han loves my split keyboard because now he can put his paws in between, on the desk, and then he can sit on me. So let's just hope he doesn't mess with any of the keys. Done that before. Han has scheduled meetings and slacked people and done all sorts of other things.
Nice. Yeah.
Mashes the keyboard.
Some
So
extra meetings.
yeah, it's joyful when you see what. Oh, it's the cat. Oh, okay. Yeah, cool, cool. Checks out, checks out. So, oh, not that's so the Dulphine, I think I'm saying that right. It's I always get a kick out of what we decide to call ourselves online. Person who asked the question said, but sitting in one project for a few years can create the false conclusion about some of those decisions. there's some truth to that. We may draw the wrong conclusions. And I've certainly seen instances where that's how we've always done it becomes the mantra. And obviously, this must
Yeah.
be the best way to do it because that's how we've always done it. So I can definitely see that as well. So, oh, okay, well. So the BS worked for a few of us. Some went on to jobs at Apple and Spotify. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, especially we get older, we get a little bit more grumpy, I would say, right?
Right,
Like tolerant or less tolerant to changes, right? Or to
right,
change the way we work. So
right. A kitty did decide to mess with my keyboard, so I don't even know where I am anymore here now. Gotta find the right page. My cat messed something up on me. Hope that didn't screw up the stream. That would be bad. Let's see here. So now I can't see any of my comments. Thanks, kitty cat. Usually, oh, and now he's back for more. Okay, Han, if you're gonna hang out with me, then you just gotta like chill. You just gotta like hang out like right here. I think he's picky because he didn't get. My cats are very particular about how the morning routine goes, and the morning routine didn't happen today, and so I think he's feeling very left out, and certain I'm going to pay a price for that, I guess, is the moral of the
yeah.
story. Like yesterday, we were gone for several hours at this concert, and the cats are like, "What's going on? You guys don't leave the house anymore." So I'm assuming that had something to do with it. But okay, can you just stay right there, please? Good time, cat. Good time. Anyway, sorry about that. The joy of we'll do it live. So
Yeah.
is there any now having organized events, having been in this space long enough? I mean, I'm guessing you've given your brother some advice, but is there anything that you wish you had known 10 years ago? If you could go back in time, is there anything you would say to a younger Sergi?
From a developer point of view, you
Or
say,
anything,
or
really. I mean,
uh, I don't know. Probably don't procrastinate too much. I'm really good at procrastination.
oh, I hear that. I
So
hear that.
when it comes to organizing events, if you're procrastinating, it's gonna be it's so stressful, right?
Yes.
Oh geez, I remember in one of the first editions of Spring Idea, I was can't remember what was it, but I was sending something right to the venue or to I don't know, it was a printer, right? Because I had to print something, and I was in Madrid. It was the day before. I was like, hey, now I'm done. I've done it. I send it to this printer, and I'm going to just pick it up. I'm calling the printer, and they're like, no, we're in Barcelona. We're not in Madrid. It's like, oh, geez, you know, and so many stories like this one. When you procrastinate, everything becomes so stressful, right?
Right.
And I learned the hard way, right? So now I'm more organized with everything, and
Mm-hmm.
this makes your lives easier, right? So easy. Right? Procrastination. Yeah, you have to pay a lot of tolls, right? When you
Right.
procrastinate for that. So at least for uh, organizing events, right? So that's a really, really hard thing to do.
Well, and some of that is it at least in my very limited experience with the events I've helped out with, it takes longer than you think. And
Oh
we
yeah,
sort of have this false feeling like, oh, that should only take like 5 minutes. It's the running joke of if you're going to do a home improvement project, you should double the time you think it's going to take, and however many trips to the store you think you'll need, it's really going to be twice that much, and it's probably also going to cost you two or three times what your initial thinking is, and you just kind of have to bake that into the equation. And
yeah. I think that we are really bad at estimates, right? Or I'm
oh yeah,
really bad at
yeah.
estimates. So
Oh no, I think
yeah,
I think everybody is, and I don't, and that's not just a
yeah,
software thing, by the way. If
yeah.
you've ever done home renovation,
Oh yeah.
estimates are just you just throw them out the window. They're just
I'm
made
in
up
it. I'm
numbers.
in it now.
Yeah,
I'm in it now.
yeah. So
So
it's
yeah.
I used to think that was just something that software people, we were just bad at it because we're such a new industry, and that if we were a more mature industry, we'd be good at it. And then when we built this house, I learned, yeah, no, oh, this will only take X number of weeks. Yeah, no, there's no getting around that at all. But all right, so
Yeah,
Delphine's got
software
another
is.
comment for us. An approach to learning and leaving a company a good thing? Is it just dev business? Should we also focus on business income of a product? What's the border of recognizing by doing enough, not too much, complex, way simple? There's a lot to unpack there. I'd say that the first thing I would throw out at you is the fact that as developers, we have to remember that what we do is about supporting a business in some way, shape, or form, and it's about getting code into production to solve a business problem. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
we do need to have a pretty good understanding of that. And at the talk of business, the cat decides he's out of here. All right, we'll go move along then. Give me cricket, I tell you.
Well, the thing is that yeah, doing like fun things like I don't know some framework specific stuff. It's more fun than just yeah solving
Absolutely.
the use case. So we usually get into those yeah things that don't bring value probably to the company, but they're more fun to do, right? So
Darn
it's
right.
always a balance. And I really yeah myself I really like to understand right how this brings value to the company. So I've had several startups. So at the end of the day, if you have your own startup, you have to bring value. You have
Right.
to basically you can't spend time right building fun stuff right. Like hey, I'm gonna build a framework that's doing this and that and so on. It's really fun. I would love to spend a lot of time here, but I can't afford it, right? If you want to bring value. So uh, I think this is crucial, right, to understand why are you doing this.
Yeah, because meta work's more interesting than work. And I know
Yeah.
I stole that from Neil. But and I mean, it's a really deep question though, this piece on as developers, we have this tendency to, some people call it over engineering, some people call it gold plating. We
Yeah.
do tend to dive down into some of those rabbit holes and get very excited about, well, but if somebody wants to do this or they could do this, and we this is why the phrases like Yagni and others pop up to remind us that sometimes we just need to take a step back and say, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve right now
Right.
today? Is this necessary to solve that problem, or is it just, well, this would be a fun problem for me to solve, ergo
Right.
that's why I want to go in that direction? That's a hard thing to fight, as a developer, for sure.
Yeah. As a developer, also, and from a company perspective, because you want to keep everyone like happy and
Right.
everyone should feel like, well, it's doing interesting stuff and so on. Right? So I think it's like yeah, a balance between you, company, and everyone. So everyone is happy with what you're doing.
Right. Well, and we don't
It's
want to
really
paint
difficult.
ourselves. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
I
we
was
don't want to
thinking,
paint ourselves into a corner, right? I mean, that's the other part of it is you can recognize, and we've all had that experience where we made a decision and it put us in a situation where, wow, we can't adjust to this, or to adjust to it is a really significant change. So sometimes that experience kind of works against us in those regards.
yeah, yeah. And I'm not sure if we had any conversations with companies nowadays, but retention of the people is really hard, right? More than before.
Right.
So yeah, you find that companies like trying to do anything to retain or keep people right, at the company. So if they want to do this, well, let's go ahead and do this, that. So we have more freedom than before, I would say.
And some of the changes we've seen in technology have given us more freedoms. When you and I first started playing around with these things as an organization, you kind of made a decision that this is our toolkit because we're going to stand up infrastructure, and supporting that infrastructure is going to require specialization by our people and the operators, and we can't support 17 different kinds of stacks. And with cloud
Right.
environments, some of that constraint has been removed. I mean, there is still the constraint of you can only support so many things. The idea that you can write in whatever you feel like, that doesn't work at any kind of scale that I've ever seen. But you at least have removed that governor of, well, no, we've already decided this is our database, and that's the database the entire company has to use. You have more of that. Now that opens up another big challenge, which is how do we make good decisions as teams, and how do we make sure
Right.
we're not just playing with this because it's fun versus, no, this is actually going to help us solve this problem. So okay, so we got another follow-up, very hard question: how to build self-confidence as a developer. Oh, how do I shape the code? What does that mean if you don't have that confidence? Ooh. This kind of gets into like imposter syndrome, I think.
Right. Yeah, it does. It does. It's hard. Um, I don't know. I think it comes over time, right? So as you are more experience, you become more confident in yourself up until the point where you figure out that you don't know anything, and then you're back to having no confidence at all. Right? And it's a loop. So it's there's so many technologies, things to learn that you're constantly learning, right? And you have to adopt that mindset that you'll be constantly learning and learning and learning, and you will never master anything, right? And that's our job to constantly learn. And you have to feel comfortable in this loop of
Right.
keeping on learning. I mean, I don't know. In 2005, when I was experiencing spring, it was impossible to have something new, right? So same applied to Kubernetes, same applied to many other technologies. We have to learn, and that's our job.
Right.
So I would say, don't obsess with this too much. The good thing about our industry is that we are paid to learn. I always say
Right.
that, and that's great. It's like, hey, there's this new thing. Go ahead and learn it. That's fine. You're not an expert. You'll learn it. So try to live with it. I think it's great. I mean, we are not expected to know everything, and they will. It changes so often that we
Right.
are paid to learn to do this, and that's our job.
See, and that's one of my frustrations with the way a lot of companies hire, with sort of especially the companies that are all about the whiteboard, code up this algorithm without the access to Stack Overflow, Google, or, IntelliSense, or even a compiler, like, because the whiteboard doesn't throw any compiler errors last time I checked.
Yeah,
And somehow that's supposed to be a reasonable test of your ability. And I think that really misses the mark. One of my favorite tweets, and I'm blanking on who wrote it, but it was, the important piece, paraphrasing, is your ability to learn, because
yeah.
2 years from now we're going to be doing different stuff than we're doing today. And so how do you learn, to me, is a much more important question than, okay, are you an expert on this thing we happen to be using right now, which, again, in 2 years we'll probably be moving on to something else.
Yeah, I think that the mindset and the attitude is yeah, it's actually um, based. How we put that? It's actually more important than the skill set, right? So the skills themselves. So you can learn any technology, right? So it's all about willing to learn that technology, and that's about it, right? So it's I would say the attitude is much more important than a particular technology.
That's a good point. It is an attitude too, and it is that willingness to learn new things, that willingness to be to not be the expert. And that's hard, especially when you have 5 or 10 years with something and you feel pretty comfortable with it, and then, oh wait, here's this new thing or this new version of that, and now I have to kind of
Yeah.
start back over. It's kind of like that experience of going from high school to college, or from middle school to high school.
Wow.
You were the top of the tree, and now you're back down 4 or 5 pegs, and you got to work your way back up. That's hard, but it is, I think, an attitude you have to go in that direction.
Anyways,
Um,
I would say that, well, it's the you need to adapt like the framework, right? That we were talking about that has been adapting itself over these years. We have to do the same thing with
mhm.
ourselves, right? So we need to adapt with the market and follow the trends and directions. Again, it's an attitude, and we have to live with it. So I wouldn't stress out too much about it.
Right.
Uh, again, we're paid to do that.
Well,
We're
and you
not.
get better at it over time too. You start to get some habits, shortcuts, expertise at picking that stuff up, and I think that plays into it as well.
Well, yeah, the more things you learn, you can make more comparisons, and then say,
Yes.
okay, this resembles this and that, and so on. More or less, I know where you're going. So for sure. So
Yeah, I've always felt that way about languages. The first programming, well, really the first language, whether it's spoken, or I guess one of these human languages versus a computer language. I went to college with this woman who, and I didn't know this when I first met her, but she spoke like 13 languages, and she was actually German, but she spoke flawless, accentless English. I mean, I would have never guessed she was anything other than just a, regular old Midwestern person. And I made some comment where I said, well, can I count programming languages? And she said, totally. And I'm like, okay, good. Then I know like 4 or 5, so I felt a little better, in comparison. But the first one's hard. The second one gets easier. The third one gets easier because you got more things to compare it to. And you're like, oh, it's like
Right.
this in Ruby and like that in Java and like this and
Yeah.
that definitely helps. But oh
Yeah,
boy,
that's
Delphine's hitting me with a lot of really good questions here. Should I always have some kind of expert behind me? So when I will be that expert, or when will I be that expert? I think if I'm always waiting for someone to approve things I've done, isn't that very dangerous that I'll copycat the wrong person? Do you have any thoughts on sort of technical mentorship or I mean, it's sort of that apprenticeship model, which there is a vein of that in software, certainly not to the same extent there is in other spaces, but
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't had the yeah the chance to have a mentor myself, but I think it definitely helps, right? I'm not sure if I'm a mentor. My brother has mentioned, right, that I'm pointing him to I don't know the direction. I think it's good, but I think that it helps you to just focus on what's really important. And I'm really looking forward to a talk at Spring Idea probably will be accepted, which is talking about this, how to get a mentor, right? I think this is a really important topic, which I'm not an expert at, right? So, because I haven't had one. I would have loved to, right? But I think, well, really open to learning more on that subject.
yeah, I'm a big fan of mentorship on both sides. I think it's enriching to help someone, and I think there's a lot of subtle mentorship that goes on. I mean, it doesn't always have to be that very official mentor mentee kind of relationship, but it's just having people that you can reach out to for advice or just for, hey, how would you handle this? I mean, we do that all the time on projects where, boy, I'm not entirely sure how to fix this. This bug is driving me nuts. And you grab somebody else and pair on it, or you're just getting that other set of eyes in it. Whether you call that mentorship, I don't know. I mean, maybe in the strictest sense of the word, maybe not. But it is a good point that you can also end up perpetuating bad habits or bad
Right.
patterns by sort of copying the wrong person. And that's where, and you got to have a little bit of your own antennae, use your own instincts, like, ooh, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't feel right. Maybe there's a better way of doing this. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's subtle too. I think I don't have a cookie cutter answer for how you tell whether this is a good or a bad person to follow. But yeah, so Glenn says, always looks forward to having folks review my code, pair with someone. I know when it's time to leave a company when I become the smartest person in the room. And thank you, Glenn, for reviewing some
Those
of my code
are
the other day. I do appreciate that. I don't get to do it enough that I even remember what good practices are. But yeah, I think that's important too, is having someone that you can reach out to with
trust.
yeah, that you trust. That's a great way of phrasing it. Someone that you trust to help out. And I think you know more about that with your brother than you're giving yourself credit for here, I think. Glenn, you're being way too kind about my code, my friend. I mean, I appreciate your attitude. Bless your heart. It was serviceable. I think is the best thing I can say about my code. It was serviceable. Got the job done. So let me wrap up with some. And my kitty is being just a total pest. What is your problem today, kitty? What's going on? Did you have a question that you wanted for a friend? You want to talk about like tapas or something? We could do that. So only you're fine. So with things starting to kind of open up again, is there any place that you're excited to get back to? Is there any travel you've got in your future? Anything there you're excited about?
I really want to go back to Southeast Asia. Back in 2016, me and my wife took a 100 day off. Right,
Wow.
I wanted to have a gap year at travel for a year in Southeast Asia. But yeah, my wife was like, "Well, let's do like 4 months." So I still have 2/3
There you
pending of
go.
that.
There you go.
Right, so we have a lot of countries pending. So on that trip we started in Cambodia, Vietnam, with Laos, with Myanmar, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore. Right, so we still
Oh
have
wow.
a bunch of yeah, counter spending. So we'll travel there eventually when things get better and when my daughter allows us, probably. Because yeah, my daughter was born in the pandemic, yeah,
Right.
2020. So,
Well,
uh,
there's a magic age where they're old enough that traveling with them is pretty doable, and but they're not old enough that they've got so many other things going on. You're like, well, yeah, I guess we could be gone for a week. You know, I mean, that's kind of
right.
what we're running into with Everett now being in high school. It's really hard for us to do some of the trips that we had done in the past. Yeah, so when and
Yeah.
I think this would be 20. Let me see, this is the 17. So this was 2019, I think. It was must have been when I was in Spain with him. And he wasn't in high school yet, and so the idea of just being off school for a week or whatever wasn't that big a deal. A little harder to miss 10 days of high school, especially when
Yeah.
you've got all these other activities and all these other things where it's like, well, but I can't miss this and I can't miss that. And you're like, well, okay, well, I guess we can't do that trip or can't do it as a family, so you're very close to that magical age where they travel well, but yet pulling them out of school for a week is not a big deal.
Yeah. No, I will say that yeah, retirement is not designed in the best way. So we should take
Agreed.
retirement and just take 1 year off when you're 25, and another
Yep.
year off when you're 35, another year off when you're 45, and so on. You have to split retirement right across the
Yep.
entire life, and that would work better. So we'd love to have this model so you can travel the world like for a year when you have the energy. When you're young and not waiting
Right.
for the retirement. And yeah, my wife was like, "Hey, when we're retired, we're going to resume that." I
It's hard. It's hard. There's no getting around it because as you get
yeah,
older, the travel wears on you more, and it's you
yeah,
kind of get
yeah,
stuck in your routines, and it's more difficult to kind of pull yourself away. And some of it too is you got your habits, you got your hobbies, and the idea
yeah,
of disrupting all that just doesn't feel great. But I think it's so powerful. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm so blessed in what I get to do is I get a chance to visit a lot of really cool places, and I think that's what excites me. It's something I love about this job, and I think it's good for everybody, frankly, to get out amongst it, go experience these things and see these places. To your point, do it when you can.
yeah. Well, at least this year I have San Francisco the Raider Spring One December. So
Yes.
hopefully we'll see each other there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I think Tasha's on an airplane right now going out for a site visit. So,
Right.
it feels pretty darn real, man. It's not something I could say a year ago. And, I guess I'm guardedly optimistic that we're just a few weeks away from starting to kind of peek our heads out of our little caves and see what happens.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. So,
Yeah.
well, we've covered a lot of interesting ground today. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. I mean, these are some very deep questions out of the chat today. Thank you all for hanging out with us. I appreciate folks who kept with us after Whitney and Lee. So that was pretty cool. Any other thought? So let's just make sure we tell everybody Spring IO, when is it? And you got another like 12 hours to fill in your CFP. So if you've got an idea, pitch it.
Yeah. So Spring IO in Barcelona at the end of May 26 and 27. That's perfect dates to spend the weekend in Barcelona. So Thursday and Friday, then you stay over the weekend. And I would love to see you all there. And if you have any ideas, you want to share anything, the CFP is open. Right? You still have, yeah, actually more than 24 hours. So it's going to
Okay.
close at, yeah. Tomorrow. So don't worry if you haven't talked at any conference. Right? So we usually try to encourage everyone to submit. We love seeing new people. Right? We love seeing who's in the community. Right? So don't be shy. Send your proposal. Right? We always welcome new speakers. You have seen right the Spring communities, they're really welcoming and open. We are at the conference as well. So we'd love to see new faces. And so share your experiences, your thoughts, anything like that. We are all working on interesting stuff, right? So everyone has something to say for sure. So I encourage you to send an abstract and meet with the community. So I would love to see you all there.
So I would encourage folks who maybe have a more intro level talk. Don't be afraid to pitch
Oh
those.
yeah,
We as we talked about earlier, you and I've kind of been at this long enough that we sort of grew up with some of these things, and so you forget there's still a lot of people who are like, well, wait, what is
yeah.
Spring? I don't
Mhm.
even understand the basics of it, and so don't feel like you're top. Oh, it's too simple. No, everybody knows this. Believe me, there's a huge audience for that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid that you don't think it has to be the most complicated, esoteric thing in the whole world.
Yeah, that's one of the feedbacks I get. So there are no intro talks. And then it's hard to get intro talks, to be honest, because
Right.
people I feel like, well, this is not the right audience, but yeah, there's room for those as well. So if you have
Yep.
any ideas and you don't feel like well, like this is the right talk, just think and let me know whether that's a good idea for the campus or not. So just don't be shy, just ping me, right? Send me an email, and can point you to the right direction as well.
Absolutely. Well, and don't forget that those beginner eyes can be so powerful because you see
Oh yeah.
things that people who've been around it long enough sort of gloss over or forget that, oh yeah, I do have to explain this, don't I? There's a lot of little nuance there that sometimes gets lost when someone's been doing this for 5 or 10 years, and so don't be afraid to throw something out there that you know helps shed a light on some of that. So well, Sergio, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, and my apologies for my cat, who now finally is distracted because my wife got back from a walk with a neighbor. So he'll leave us alone now that we're wrapping up. That's how that works. And well, hi, Dolphin. Thank you from Poland. I miss Poland as well. Hopefully, I'll be back there this year as well. But man, so many places to go, so little time. But anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Well,
I'm
thanks for having me here. I really enjoyed your time as well, and you're doing a good job at hosting
thank
all
you.
this every week, so constantly, which is
I
hard.
try. I try.
Yeah.
I appreciate you hanging out with me and see. I told you it'd just be me lobbing softball questions at you. It's
Yeah.
not hard. It's like the zero prep thing. That's all it's about. But
It's
so
good.
for those of you that are new to the show, next week I'll have Neil Busing on, and I assure you that will be a very heavily Ted Lasso themed episode without a doubt. So he and I will be going through season 2 amongst talking about technology things, but we will definitely be discussing season 2 of Ted Lasso. If you have not watched Ted Lasso, that's fine. It'll just be a lot of spoilers for you, but otherwise, we'll see you next week and then see what kind of trouble that gets us into. So thanks again, my friend. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all.